It started with a photo I wasn't supposed to see and a choice I never wanted to make. I wasn't looking for trouble. Honestly, I was just trying to grab a charger from Emma's kitchen counter while she was out of the room. Her phone lit up with a message from a name I didn't recognize. Mark, work. Nothing unusual, right? Except the preview read, "Last night was amazing. Let's do it again. Same place." I didn't even want to read more. But I did. I clicked. And it was all there. Weeks of messages. Plans. Lies. Photos. All from a number saved under a careful label. Emma was my best friend. Or so I thought. And the man she was cheating on was her husband, Daniel. And Daniel was also my friend. We met through her, shared dinner tables, holiday trips, and side jokes. He helped me paint my apartment when I was broken. He was the kind of man you don't just let walk into a lie. I stared at that screen and felt a pit open in my stomach. I had a choice. I could pretend I hadn't seen it, or I could ruin a marriage. The worst part, I thought I was doing the right thing. After 2 sleepless nights, pacing the floor and rehearsing a dozen imaginary conversations, I messaged him, "Can we talk?" I didn't tell Emma. I didn't even respond when she asked why I'd gone quiet for a couple of days. I met Daniel at the cafe we all used to go to. He smiled when he saw me. That warm, unsuspecting smile. I was about to burn his world to the ground, and he smiled at me like I was bringing good news. I didn't go into details. I didn't need to. I showed him 2 screenshots. I told him I found them by accident. He didn't speak for a long time. His eyes didn't blink. When he finally looked up at me, I expected shock or heartbreak or fury. Instead, there was something else in his stare, something sharp, something unreadable. I had seen Daniel angry. I had seen him hurt. But this was something else. And I realized too late that maybe I hadn't just exposed a betrayal. I'd stepped into a place I didn't belong. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't cry, ask for more details, or even try to deny it. He just nodded slowly, folded the napkin on the table like we were at a polite lunch, and said, "I see." I kept expecting something more or anything. But his voice was so calm, it was almost frightening. He glanced out the window and said he had to get back to the office. He thanked me. Actually said, "Thanks for telling me." Then he left, just like that. I sat there with my untouched coffee, wondering if I'd just made the worst mistake of my life. The silence afterward wasn't just his, it was everywhere. Emma didn't call me. Daniel didn't message. The group chat we all shared went dark. I became a ghost in my own life, walking around with the weight of someone else's marriage on my shoulders. I kept telling myself I had done the right thing. Cheating is wrong. Hiding it is worse. But nothing about this felt clean or noble. I wasn't the heroine of some moral tale. I was the person who had lit a match and then waited, heart pounding, to see how far the fire would spread. A week later, I saw him again. He was at the same cafe, alone this time. I almost walked past, but he looked up and gestured to the chair across from him. So I sat. The silence between us was thick, but not angry. Just unfinished. He finally said, "You know, you didn't just tell me. You chose to." I didn't know what to say. I had. And I'd done it without asking him if he wanted to know. Without giving Emma a chance to explain. I'd assumed I was doing the right thing. And maybe I had been, but that didn't mean he owed me anything. Then came the line that stuck in my ribs. "It's not the betrayal that hit me the hardest. It was you being the one to bring it to me." His eyes weren't angry, but they weren't kind either. It was like I'd stolen something sacred, not just the illusion of his marriage, but the right to discover its collapse on his own terms. I nodded. I didn't defend myself. What would be the point? Some truths, once delivered, can't be returned to sender. I had crossed a line, even if I had done it for what I thought were the right reasons. The way he looked at me that day, I still see it when I close my eyes. It took 10 days. 10 days of silence before Emma finally called me. Her voice was tight, like she had rehearsed the tone to sound calm but couldn't quite land it. "I think we should talk," she said. No greeting, no small talk. Just that line, clipped, almost mechanical. We met at her apartment. The same apartment I used to crash in after wine nights and bad dates. But now the air felt like static, like something was about to snap at any moment. She didn't ask how I found out. She already knew. "You told him," she said, like reading a weather report. No rage, no tears. Just those 3 words, and a look that could crack glass. I nodded. There was no point in lying. She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. You didn't even talk to me first. That part hurt more than I expected. Because she was right. I hadn't. I didn't trust her to explain. Or maybe I didn't trust myself not to let her talk me out of doing it. She didn't deny the affair. She didn't say sorry either. It wasn't just about sex, she said, almost too casually. Daniel and I haven't been right for a long time. You know that. I did in a vague way. I'd heard the arguments, the tired silences, the way he'd say good night without looking at her. But affairs aren't just answers to broken things. They're choices. I told her that. She laughed. Easy for you to say. You've never been married. That one landed like a slap. Like suddenly my lack of a ring made me morally unqualified to care. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Do you have feelings for him? She asked. I blinked, stunned. What? Daniel. Did you tell him because you care too much? There it was, the accusation beneath the surface. The story she was writing in her head to explain my betrayal of her. I could have denied it, could have gotten angry. But the truth is, I didn't know how to answer. Because maybe, just maybe, there had always been something quietly unspoken between me and Daniel, and maybe that made my decision all the more dangerous. After Emma's question, I couldn't sleep for days. Not because I had a clear answer, but because I didn't. I kept going back to memories, little things that hadn't meant much at the time. The way Daniel would remember my coffee order when Emma forgot. The long talks we had in the kitchen after dinner, just the two of us cleaning up. The way he once said, half laughing, sometimes I think you understand me better than she does. I'd shrugged it off, but now it felt like a thread that had been quietly pulling for years, and I had finally yanked it loose. I told myself I had never crossed a line. And technically I hadn't. There were no hidden glances, no late-night confessions. But the emotional weight was there. A closeness built not just on friendship, but on understanding, the kind you don't always find in the person you marry. And I hated that Emma had seen it before I did. Her question wasn't an accusation. It was a mirror. And when I looked into it, I saw guilt, yes, but also something worse. Doubt. Daniel hadn't contacted me since that second conversation. I didn't expect him to. But I checked my phone constantly, as if the universe owed me clarity. I wanted him to tell me it meant nothing, that I was just the messenger and nothing more. But silence is cruel. It gives your fears time to bloom. And the worst thought I had was this. Maybe I hadn't told him out of loyalty or integrity. Maybe I told him because I wanted to be the one he turned to after. That thought alone made me sick. One evening, I passed him on the street. Total accident. We locked eyes, both frozen. He stopped, like he might say something. But he just nodded, polite, distant, and kept walking. Not angry, not cold, just removed, like something had ended quietly, and neither of us had been brave enough to name it. And maybe that was the real betrayal. Not Emma's affair, not my message, but the quiet possibility that all three of us had been lying to ourselves long before any of us spoke a word. A week later, Emma moved out. No goodbye, no confrontation. Just a text that said, leaving the key under the mat. Don't worry about the plants. We hadn't spoken since that last conversation, and maybe that was for the best. There wasn't much left to say. She had always been the kind of person who walked away from fire rather than trying to put it out. I stared at the empty living room we once filled with laughter and wine and secrets, and I couldn't tell whether I missed her or just missed who I thought she was. Daniel, on the other hand, filed for separation. Quietly. No drama. That was his way. But people started asking questions. Mutual friends, co-workers, neighbors. They wanted to know what had happened, and why the couple that seemed so solid had suddenly fallen apart. I didn't offer details. Let them guess. Let them fill in the blanks. The truth, after all, wasn't something that could be packaged into one neat headline. It was messy, layered, full of choices that felt right in the moment but looked like betrayal in hindsight. I expected to feel lighter. Isn't that what happens when the truth comes out? But instead, I felt like I was carrying 3 different versions of a story. Emma's, Daniel's, and my own. None of them quite matched. Each came with its own set of wounds. I started avoiding the usual places, ducking out of social circles, ignoring calls. People weren't cruel. They were careful, too careful. And that kind of politeness can sting more than judgment. It makes you feel like a danger no one wants to name. Then one afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox. From Daniel. Not a message. A real letter, written by hand and pen. It was short. No apologies. No accusations. Just a few lines. I don't blame you. I think part of me always knew. Maybe that's why it hurt the way it did. You told me the truth when no one else would. That matters. Take care of yourself. I read it 3 times, then folded it and put it away in a drawer I never open unless something ends. Maybe this had ended too. Not with a fight, not with closure, but with a sentence I could finally carry without choking on it. It mattered, and that would have to be enough. There's a quiet that follows chaos. Not peace exactly, more like stillness. Like the world holds its breath around you, waiting to see what you'll become once the damage settles. That's where I've been living. In the silence after the truth. No more late-night messages. No confrontations. Just days passing, one after the other, like pages you're too tired to read but too afraid to skip. I started going for long walks. Not for exercise, but for escape. There's something about being in motion that makes the weight easier to bear. I would pass by places where we used to laugh, Emma and me, or Daniel and me, and wonder how memories turned so quickly from soft to sharp. But I didn't flinch anymore. Not every memory was ruined. Some were just done. Like a season that ended and didn't return. That realization didn't come with relief. It came with a quiet kind of sadness that felt almost like growing up. One evening, I ran into someone from our old group of friends. They gave me that look, the one that's half sympathy, half curiosity. "How are you holding up?" they asked. I said I was fine. It wasn't true, but it wasn't false either. I was fine in the way people are when they've been through fire and learned how to walk barefoot. It still hurts, but you stop screaming. You just move forward. They nodded and said, "You were brave, you know." I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. But maybe that's what bravery really is. Not dramatic gestures, but the choice to act, knowing it might cost you. I haven't spoken to Emma again. I don't expect to. And Daniel, he exists somewhere now as someone I knew deeply once. Maybe he'll meet someone else. Maybe I will too. Or maybe this is the kind of story that doesn't end in romance, but in recognition of who we are, what we're capable of, and how far we'll go for the truth. I told him about his wife's betrayal. I didn't think he would look at me that way. But I understand now. He wasn't just looking at me. He was seeing the end of the life he thought he had. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of one he never imagined. It's strange how you don't notice growth until you're past the pain. Like a healed bone, it still aches when it rains, but you forget how bad the break was. I look back now, not with regret, but with distance. Everything that happened, the betrayal, the silence, the fallout, it reshaped me. I wouldn't say I'm stronger. That word always feels like armor. What I am is clearer, more precise about what I let in and what I let stay. I used to think truth was the highest good, that exposing it, no matter the cost, was noble. Now I see it differently. Truth matters, but how you tell it, when you tell it, and why you tell it matters just as much. I don't regret telling Daniel. I regret not asking myself whose story I was really in. I walked into their marriage with facts, but without permission. And even if it saved him from more lies, it also cost us something none of us could name. There's peace in understanding that some people are meant to be chapters, not whole books. Emma was a chapter. Daniel, too. I don't reread those pages often, but I don't tear them out either. They made me who I am, someone who still believes in honesty, but now walks slower toward the fire. Not everything broken needs me to fix it. Not every truth is mine to deliver. That's the lesson, I think. The one I wish I'd learned before, but am grateful to carry now. Sometimes I wonder if Daniel ever thinks about me. Not with longing, that part was always imagined more than real, but with understanding. I hope so, because I still think about him. About how you can love someone quietly, deeply, without ever touching them. And how, sometimes, that kind of love is the most dangerous of all, because it hides beneath the surface, waiting to be justified. But I don't need justifications anymore. I only need truth, and distance, and the version of me that survived. I moved apartments last month. Nothing dramatic, just a smaller place with quieter walls. No more echoes of shared laughter or arguments muffled behind closed doors. Just me, a bookshelf, a kettle that whistles too loud, and space to be someone new. I didn't take much with me. No photos of the 3 of us, No wine glasses from Emma's kitchen. Just one framed print that says, "Begin again, even if you're not ready." I bought it on a whim. Now, it greets me every morning like a dare. I don't talk about them anymore, not out of bitterness, but out of choice. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just making dinner for one and not feeling the absence of two. It's deleting the number you never called but always kept, just in case. It's answering the question, "Are you seeing anyone?" with a smile that says, "Not yet, but I'm seeing myself clearly, finally." I've started writing again, not texts, not apologies. Just words. My own. Stories that belong only to me. One of the hardest things I had to accept was that closure is an ode. Daniel never called again. Emma never apologized. And I stopped waiting. Waiting is a form of emotional debt, one I no longer agree to carry. If someone wants to make peace with you, they will. And if they don't, you make peace with their silence. That's how I live now. Not hardened, not guarded, just lighter. Like someone who finally put down the suitcase she didn't realize she was dragging for years. This isn't a story with a new love interest waiting in the wings. There's no tidy bow. Just breath, stillness, and quiet joy. I talk to myself kinder now. I forgive myself faster. I leave when I need to. And sometimes, in the middle of a Thursday, I'll think about Daniel, not with pain, but with a soft exhale. Not every connection is meant to last. Some come to remind you of who you are when you're honest, even when it costs everything. And that version of me? She's finally home,